Welcome back, everyone. York Region has moved into the red zone with more now. I'm joined live via Skype by Vaughan Mayor Maurizio Bevilacqua. Mr. Mayor, thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, George.
So your re-entry into the red zone has been kind of whitewashed by all the snow, and that'll make some kind of blue. Are you totally on the same page, Mr. Mayor, as Dr. Kurji, who says really no need for any stricter measures right now?
Yes, I am, actually. I think that Dr. Kurji has been really at the forefront of making some very wise decisions for the region of York. I can tell you the balance is the following, George. On one hand, you need to recognize that you can't let people fall into a false sense of security, because these are not ordinary times. Absolutely not. They're not ordinary times, and we have to recognize that. However, you also don't want individuals to be immobilized by fear, where they feel hopeless and that they are helpless during COVID-19. So balancing those two psychological states are extremely important in our fight against COVID-19. So in many ways, going to the red zone is telling people that we have made progress, that we have the confidence within the numbers and the stats and the scientific knowledge that we have to move to a different zone. And that should provide the hope that I was talking about. And on the other hand, what we have is that because everybody by now is really well educated in the area of COVID-19, everybody knows the protocols. So it comes a point in time, as I've always been throughout this global pandemic, I really trust people to make smart decisions and use their common sense. And the vast majority of residents here in the city of Vaughan and York Region and in the Greater Toronto Area do precisely that.
What are your feelings on kind of micro amendments within the red zone restrictions for things like gatherings? For example, Mayor Scarpitti Markham, some are saying he's kind of cherry picking one thing at a time, and if you start there, where do you end?
Well, it's not a question of cherry picking. I think that there are some concerns that collectively as a council we may have that may help in reducing the risks. And so you assess each factor. But ultimately, the decisions that I back are decisions made by Dr. Kurji, who is looking at these issues in a very precise and clinical way to make sure that we reduce the risk. At the end of the day, it's all about risk assessment. And if your medical officer of health has done a risk assessment that states essentially that we can move to a zone, you've got to trust that individual. And I'll tell you why that is important. Because if you do enter into an era of cherry picking and accepting or rejecting the medical officer of health advice, then the system breaks down. And also public confidence breaks down, because people are intelligent, they use their common sense, and they will see that in certain areas or certain periods of time we're listening to our medical officer. And that is why throughout the global pandemic, I've supported Dr. Kurji, because I think he's an authority in the field.
You mentioned the word risk. I think the consensus would be and agree that these variants and even these recombinants are the risk here. Now, the emergency brake option, this, fail safe to kind of prevent a third rail with variant spread. Are you as concerned about these variants, Mr. Mayor, as the public health professionals seem to be when you look at, as you said, trying to score the balance between protecting life and livelihood?
Look, extreme measures on either side are probably wrong. I think you have to find the middle ground, the sweet spot in every decision-making process, whatever decision you're making on whatever issue. And I do think that I have great confidence in people, because they're so well educated in the field of COVID-19 by now, to make the right decisions. And I stress this theme, and I introduce this always as part of the narrative, because I don't want people to think these are just government decisions. The biggest partner that we have is really the individual Canadian, the individual region resident and citizen of Vaughan, who have to make decisions every day on an hourly basis in this fight against COVID-19. And so when you focus on the individual, and if you do have confidence on the individuals, then you find that there is a path forward. There is a path to victory towards defeating COVID-19. And I also like the fact that personal responsibility is key, because ultimately we will get out of this if we act responsibly.
And I hope everyone takes your advice also in that regard when it comes to staying within regions. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, George. Stay safe.
You too. And coming up next on Live at Noon.